The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
The following program is closed captioned for the thinking impaired.
By tomorrow, I will rule the world!
You think he's gone? He's not gone. That's the whole point. He's never gone!
Is this some radical new therapy?
You see?
Well, I must have not been paying attention when you were just talking to me. Do you think that you could repeat the question?
Facebook changed everything again. Everything. I got buttons on the side now. I have no idea what they do.
Yeah.
Can they just leave things alone? I liked it better. I liked the first Facebook better in 2009.
Oh, yeah?
When you had like Tom is, and then there was like a blank space, and then you could have your status of the day, and it was pinned to the top of your... Remember all that?
Yeah.
When Facebook used to be good?
Yeah. It's changing again very soon. It's going to make my job fun.
Yeah. It's just a nightmare. Maybe Elon Musk can buy Facebook. Make it better.
I don't know. Has he made Twitter better?
Absolutely, he has.
Really?
At least for me, he has.
Better or more entertaining?
Both?
Yeah.
All right, I'm not even going to try the Baba Buzz today.
No, we're not going to pop up.
I don't think so. She's got no energy. Been very busy. I couldn't even hit any of those notes. I just tried that whole line and nothing came out.
Nothing at all?
No. It's been way too busy.
Ooh, you know what? Before we get going, Lenny, do you want to bend that microphone? It
Towards me?
Yeah, there you go. Bring it right in there. Yeah, basically eat it. It'll be fine.
I'm feeling so much better that I'm doing more.
Yeah.
But it used to take me 5 minutes to go up the stairs. Now I just breeze up. And then
I know. I didn't realize it was you came up so fast.
But then when I get to the top, I'm out of breath.
Taking a miracle drug, Tom? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's called Simponi.
All right.
Yeah, but it makes him feel better than he really is, and then he hurts
Right.
himself.
Right.
He does
That's
too much.
exactly right.
You were saying this last
I
week.
get out of breath going up the stairs because my body's used to taking 5 minutes to do that.
It's like that didn't hurt at all, except I think I'm gonna have a heart attack.
Right, exactly. All right, I guess we'll get this show on the road, shall we?
Why not?
Hi, how you guys doing? My name's Tom Duggan with the Paying Attention Podcast. Hi atop Two Guys Smoke Shop at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. We've got a great guest in. We're going to talk to him in a few minutes. But I want to get to a few things before we start the show. I want to thank Tim Collins from Local 7 Ironworkers for donating the food last night to TMF for the homeless. We appreciate that. And we appreciate everybody at TMF who helps out with the homeless, whether it's donating food or clothes or the big item right now that we need the most of, Sterno cans. It's been going to be really cold this weekend. Somebody donated 8 or 9 cases of Sterno cans last week. Those were gone. Those were gone in 2 days.
Yeah.
They were gone in 2 days. So I think we've got like 2 cases left. That's not going to last us tonight. So anybody that wants to donate something for the homeless, Sterno cans are the big thing. Sterno cans and hand warmers right now are like the big thing that we need the most of. So, and almost every day I want to thank like all the random anonymous people who like almost every day I get to my office and there's a bag of something outside my office door with a note saying, "Here, this is for the homeless." And at least 5 out of every 6 times that happens, there's no name. Like, it's just somebody who came by the office, they knew we needed stuff, they dropped it off, didn't even tell us who they were so we could thank them publicly. So to all of those people, we appreciate that you do that. It does make a big difference when we're out there. For me, it's the worst feeling in the world when we get to, like, our last stop and someone says, "Do you have any hand warmers? We're really cold," and we're out, and we don't have any left. That's, like, the worst feeling in the world. Because then it's like 11 o'clock at night on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and we're driving around to stores looking to try and buy some to try and get to that one guy that we missed. So for those people, thank you very much. Also, we've got a quick bash update. The bash is in 57 days. It's 57 days from today. And we did really good the first week. We raised almost $10,000 in our first week. And then last week, not so much. So it's time to start stepping it up for those of you who normally donate to our scholarships. And I would do the I would do the numbers here, but I just, for some reason, don't have it directly in front of me. If you give me 1 second, I will get that. Tote boards, and it would be
I've
this
got them. I can read them out.
Oh, if you want
to,
sexy voice, absolutely. Why don't you do it for us?
I can do it. All right. So where are we at the moment? The Dan Cody Memorial is at a total at the moment of $2,185. We have the Lawrence High Junior ROTC. We got $300 in that one at the moment. Haverhill High, the Benedetti Scholarship is at $1,400. The Lawrence Tech, Greater Lawrence Tech, $1,170. We have the Whittier at $975. Methuen High, which is the aptly named Studio 21, that's me, that's us. Podcast Cafe
Isn't she
scholarship
adorable?
is we are at, funnily enough, $2,100, and the special needs scholarship is currently at $1,200 at a grand total so far of $9,330.
Did you do a great job on that?
Awesome voice, too, I got to say. Very professional.
I can read numbers.
Sexiest voice in podcast. Now, we did get a $100 donation last night, but the person didn't say where they wanted that $100 to go. Oh. So we're putting that aside. Okay. Whenever we get a donation and it doesn't say what the person wants it to go to, we put it aside. We don't add it into the totals. And then toward the end, if it looks like, whatever the Whittier kid needs, the Whittier kid's number is the lowest, we'll add it to that scholarship. That's so we want to thank Sue Evans last night for giving us a $100 donation. That will get worked into one of these unless she says, no, I wanted that to go to a specific scholarship. Right. Otherwise, we'll give it to the kid that has the least amount, like when we get close to the thing. We also made a big announcement, and I couldn't be more happy to have him back. He's been a staple at the Bash up until the last couple of years when Charlie Baker screwed him over, and they tried to frame Francisco Urena for the deaths at the old soldiers' home. And thank God for Linda Campbell, former state rep in Methuen, and Kevin Sullivan, former mayor of Lawrence, and former director of administration and finance for the state, for behind the scenes doing an awful lot of work to exonerate Francisco Urena and prove that he had nothing to do with that. He's going to be one of our keynote speakers at the Bash this year, and he always does a great job. It's one of those things where we give out a couple of awards to hero veterans who not only went off and served, but then came back and continued serving their country by serving their community. Mm-hmm. And we always give Francisco Urena the opportunity to nominate someone, and then he's the guy that gets up and does the presentation and stuff. So, and he knows all kinds of stuff about veteran things because he's a Purple Heart hero. So, we let him do that. No phones on the Paying Attention podcast.
And I believe you're announcing the first scholarship recipient.
We do. I want to thank Jessica Finicaro. Now we'll put her picture up. And now I know what you guys are thinking. The second I saw her picture, and I'm going to get crap for this. So I know what you guys are thinking. I just want to say right out of the gate, I did not pick any of the scholarship kids. I'm going to pick one. I'm going to pick the Cody kid. But all of the other 7 scholarship recipients, I didn't pick them. This young lady, her name is Ariel Cavaretta. She's from Methuen. She goes to the Greater Lawrence Tech. She's getting the Greater Lawrence Tech scholarship, and she was picked and vetted by Methuen City Councilor Jessica Finicaro. So I had no idea who was getting the scholarship until Jessica picked the kid and sent me the picture in the bio. Congratulations to Ariel. I got a bunch of emails from people after I posted a picture. Go, yeah, we know why you picked her. I didn't pick her. So keep your hate mail to yourself. This is one of the reasons, by the way, that I let other people pick scholarship winners and award winners, so nobody can ever claim that there's any kind of shenanigan going on. Now, we want to make sure that everything's on the up and up and everything's transparent publicly. So we want to thank them for that. And I had one more thing here, or did I? Let's see. Francisco, Janice, nope. So I guess that's it. In the studio with me today, boy, I'll tell you, we followed this. We talked about it every week while it was going on, the big drama. State Representative Lenny Mirra won his election initially on election night by about 100 votes or so.
On election night, we won by 100 votes. That is correct.
And at the end of this, I'm going to have him go through the timeline for you. At the end of this, they were mysteriously finding They were finding ballots that all had his opponent's name on it. Like, they didn't find any ballots with his name on it. They would just miss. Look here behind the computer, we found one. And look, look underneath the doormat in front of the election office, we found another one. Look, we have no idea where these came from, but we got to count them because every vote should count, right? And at the end of this, you ended up, at least according to the official records, now losing by what, 1 vote?
1 vote.
1 vote. I am officially declaring shenanigans. I know that Lenny doesn't want to. That means everybody go home and get your broom. Shenanigans have been declared. What I wanted Lenny, I wanted him here for a couple of reasons. I wanted to walk through the timeline of how this happened, because we continually get told by the media that there's no such thing as election fraud. Now, anybody who's followed Lawrence politics, and they say this all the time, knows that's bullshit. Anybody who's followed the Valley Patriot, we've documented voter fraud in the Merrimack Valley on numerous occasions, and yet the media continues to come out and say there's no such thing as voter fraud. And then when voter fraud does occur, they attack the people who try to uncover the voter fraud as some kind of conspiracy, crazy people. Well, listen, I have 2 words for you. Willie Lantigua. All right? You don't believe in voter fraud? I got 2 words for you, Willie Lantigua. And anybody, including Democrats like Marcos Devers and Dan Rivera, are publicly on the record about how he stole the 2009 election. In fact, when Dan Rivera, the year Dan Rivera beat Willie Lantigua, they had to ask for the entire apparatus of the Democrat state party to descend onto Lawrence on election day to make sure nobody was voting that wasn't supposed to. And then they were there for 2 days for all the recounts to make sure that nobody was fooling around with found ballots. Now, if there was no such thing as voter fraud, why would Dan Rivera have to do all that? Why would he have to bring in Elizabeth Warren and Nikki Songus and all the people she brought into Lawrence that year? He brought into Lawrence that year. Why would he have to do that if there was no such thing as voter fraud? You know, and I know there is. Now, I'm not saying that that's exactly what happened here, because I'm going to have Lenny walk you through the timeline. But I suspect, given everything that he's about to tell you, that this is definitely voter fraud. Now, I knew you probably disagree with that.
Not exactly voter fraud. Actually, believe it or not, it's more human error than anything else, to be honest with you. I'm actually absolutely
You're way
convinced
too
of that.
kind.
No, and I'll explain why.
All right, okay.
But let me stop by saying, but first of all, this is a huge Tom Duggan exclusive. This is breaking. This is a huge story. The media missed it entirely, and this is the first time I'm going public with what really happened, and it's going to be on the Tom Duggan Show, and I'm happy to do it because Tom has had me on so many times to say whatever I want to say. His paper's printed every single thing I've ever sent in. He's always given me the freedom I've needed and wanted to state my positions, and so this is an exclusive, Tom. Believe me.
Thank you.
No one has heard this before, and it hit the fan last night, or actually yesterday afternoon. Yeah, in a formal session before the House of Representatives, because that's the final arbiter.
So this really is breaking news.
It just happened. And the media missed it entirely. But on election night, so we learned we won by 100 votes, which was really close. I mean, this is out of 24,000 votes cast for state rep, and. We felt good about it, but under the new voting rules that we have, we had to wait for all the mail-in ballots to come in. And weeks after the election, they're still coming in.
Should there be a cutoff?
There's a cutoff as long as you get a postmark by the close of business day on election day. So it was November 8th, which is the latest you can have an election, because it's always the first Tuesday after the first Monday. So the 8th is the latest you can have it. And so as long as it was postmarked by 5 p.m. on November 8th, it counted. Even if it came in like a week later, they're still counting.
Let me tell you why that's outrageous. I used to work in an office where we had one of those postal things.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you pay like a certain amount for a permit.
Yeah.
You get the permit, and then you can run as many letters as you want through that, and it will stamp it, and it will postmark it as if it's at the post office.
Right.
And in fact, when I worked at City Hall in Lawrence, we had one of those, right? So there are city halls and government agencies that have these postmark machines that they can postmark. I can postmark the envelope with nothing in it, and then stuff it afterwards and mail it in 3 days later.
Well, that actually came up during the investigation because, there was a chain of custody issue in Ipswich. That's where a lot of the issues with the whole election were, in Ipswich. That's the big town in my district. And, a lot of the ballots got put in a box that, they're supposed to be put in a box that only the town clerk has a key to, right? So no one else can touch them. But these ended up in a box that everyone had a key to. It's the box you put your water bill in, your excise tax. So, half the people in town hall have access to it. But that really wasn't the problem. The problem was that, these ballots started coming in a week after the election. And they bounced off pretty well in all the towns, once again, except for Ipswich. And they had more late ballots in Ipswich than all the other towns put together, over 100 of them.
Wow.
So I said, and I went to the opening of these ballots, and almost all of them went to my opponent.
Right.
She picked up all these votes. So my 100-vote lead went to 10. I'm like, how do you do that? And so I said, I want to see those ballots. I want to see the signatures.
90 out of 90 votes all went to your opponent.
And so
that's statistically impossible.
The way they're supposed to do this is, we do mail-in ballots wrong here. What we do is we send out an application to every single registered voter in the state, right? And we know those lists are hugely inaccurate. People move, people die, whatever. But we just send these applications out.
When you moved from West Newbury
to Georgetown, yep.
Weren't you getting ballots for the people who had the house before you?
I live alone, and I got 3 ballots. I got mine plus the couple that lived there before me.
Right.
I mean, if the people in town hall didn't know me, I could have voted 3 times.
Right.
But
and at this point, you probably should have, because then you would have won by 2 votes.
No, but here's the thing. They're supposed to look at the applications. So when you want to vote by mail, you sign the application, send it to your town clerk, and then she'll send you a ballot. Then you fill out the ballot, sign the envelope, mail it back in. She's supposed to open that ballot, look at the signature on the envelope, and make sure it matches the signature on the application.
Right.
So I said, I want to see just those late arriving ones in Ipswich. It was 100, maybe 110. And in over a dozen of them, the signatures weren't even close. They did not match at all.
Right.
And I said, we want to object to this, and this is a problem. But they said, no, too late. We already opened them, because once you open them, their ballots get mixed in with all the others, and so you can't separate those late arriving ones with the rest of the population.
Yeah, but we know the number was 90, so you just subtract the 12 that you're.
Think about it. I know, and it gets worse. So my 100-vote lead went down to 10 votes. So my opponent says, I want a recount, which is fine. No, I would have done the same.
And by the way, I've watched probably 30 recounts in my life where I've stood there and watched it.
Ever see 10 votes get flipped?
I've never seen more than 3 to 5 votes flip.
Same
and
here.
And it's usually because somebody marked it, and then as they pulled the pen off, the pen marked somebody else's name too, like just a little mark on it.
Yep.
So it kicked it out as invalid. And when they go through it, they go, okay, but it was clearly for that person, and they count it.
That's the intent of the voter. Exactly.
But it's 3 to 5. I mean, I remember in the Willie Lantigua race, it flipped 1 vote out of like 30,000 people.
Ken Gray at Amesbury, same thing.
Right.
Jim Kelcourse, First Essex, he won by 11. Same thing, but the recounts really didn't change anything.
Right.
And that's what typically happens.
They almost never change
Almost
anything.
never.
Right.
But this one went south really fast. And so the first thing to do in a recount, you'll recall, is they run all the ballots through the machine to make sure you have the same number at the recount that you did during the election. Well, guess what? In Ipswich, they found 14 extra ballots. No one can figure out where these came from. Were they late? Were they overseas? Were they mail-ins?
But if there's no chain of custody of those ballots, why were they allowed to be counted?
Because the short answer is because Democrats have way better lawyers than the Republicans do. And I'll point out that for the first 3 towns, on Monday and Tuesday, we had really good lawyers from the RNC. So Ron Kaufman had these excellent lawyers that are experienced in election law, run those first 3 recounts, and the vote changed from 10 to 9. So we went into Ipswich on Wednesday up by 9 votes. We still felt pretty good about it, right? But we couldn't get those lawyers. They had to go to Georgia to work on that runoff between Herschel Walker and Warnock.
Which we all knew how that was going to work.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Why waste
it's amazing.
your time?
But they did, and so I ended up with this lawyer that was given to me by the Mass GOP. So Jim Lyons, who was a great friend, believe me, loved the guy, but we ended up with this kid that just did not know what he was doing. And Democrats had this kid, this very experienced lawyer by the name of Jerry McDonough, who's very experienced, very sly, very crafty. And if you ever commit a serious crime and you need a lawyer to get you off on a technicality, you need some unscrupulous guy, he's the guy for you, because he found a way.
If you're guilty and you need an unscrupulous lawyer,
if you're guilty as hell, hire this guy, because he found a way to flip 5 votes in Ipswich.
Outrageous.
And it was just what you described. So when there was a scribble in my opponent's oval, and it got contested, he said, no, it's the will of the voter. You have to give that to the Democrat. Her name is Kristen Kasna. And then there were 2 ballots that had the same thing with me, with scribbles. And he found a way to convince the Board of Registrars to not count those for me.
Now, so they the exact same thing, 2 for your opponent.
Exactly.
They counted it, but then for you, they didn't count it.
Minutes later. And by the way.
So you call that human error. I call that shenanigans.
Well, that is shenanigans. And so it's interesting because those 2 ballots were called by me by the people at the table. The people at the table are trained election workers. They're the town clerks from the surrounding towns. And they called these 2 ballots for Mirra. And this guy, Jerry McDonough, found a way to convince the Board of Registrars, 2 of them, 2 of the 3, to flip it to a blank. So 3 people voted to have these count for me. 2 said, no, we're going to count them as blank. And we lost 2 votes right there. So those got put aside. And At the same time in Raleigh, which also occurred on Wednesday, they went through the whole recount, and it didn't change much until the very end, where some lady by the name of Trudy Reed, who somehow was deputized into running that recount, I don't know how or why, she's from North Andover, she and the Democrat lawyers convinced the Board of Registrars to unspoil 5 ballots.
Now explain what that means, because prior to this unspoiling thing that they created, it was just a way to get more to steal elections, in my view. You voted by absentee or by mail, and if you didn't sign your envelope, it didn't count. If you didn't put the date on it, it didn't count. If you didn't do it correctly, it didn't count. Now they allow now they say, well, there's no signature. They supposedly will call the voter and allow them to come in and sign it or date it if it's not correct, so they can make the ballot correct. You know, we used to have standards in election.
Yeah, I know.
And it used to be like, if you didn't vote on election day, your vote doesn't count. If your vote wasn't received by election day, your vote doesn't count.
Back in olden days, that was the case.
Back when we had election integrity.
Yeah.
And now it seems like they've created all of these mechanisms to be able to steal elections, but they've also created mechanisms or taken away mechanisms to be able to stop people from stealing elections. So they can say, well, where's your proof?
Yeah.
Well, there's no proof. For example, like under motor voter, illegal aliens can vote, right? So, sorry about the smoke.
Not supposed to.
But they can, because
you go to get a license, you can register to vote. You go to sign up for, I don't know, welfare benefits, you can register to vote.
Right. But it's illegal under motor voter. If I'm an illegal alien and I walk into Lawrence and I say I want to register to vote, and the guy behind the counter knows I'm an illegal alien because he lives next door to me.
Okay.
By law, he can't even say, listen, you know you have to be a citizen to vote. The person behind the counter can't even challenge it because he knows the guy lives next door to him and he's an illegal alien. It's illegal to catch someone illegally voting.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense to anybody, that it's illegal to catch somebody illegally voting, so that when someone steals an election, the people that are in power can say, yeah, but there's no proof.
Well, that's
there's
why
no proof because you made it impossible to prove it.
That's why a lot of us in the legislature fought that bill to give driver's licenses to illegals, because we said this would happen. And we even had amendments, Tom, to say, all right, if we're going to do this, how about we make theirs look different? Like, make it vertical instead of horizontal, use a different colored back, something to distinguish it. So you know that this is a person that's not a citizen, but she's allowed to drive.
Right.
And you know, we couldn't even get a simple change like that put in.
See,
so their licenses look just like ours now, that's what I'm saying.
See,
and it's a mistake.
I would have been okay with that bill. Like, I'm against driver's license for illegal aliens. But if they wanted to do it the way you wanted to amend it and say, well, make it different so they can't vote, they can't use it for certain things, I might be willing to come to the middle on that, and I think a lot of conservatives probably would.
Yep.
But the reason that they say they're doing something is never the actual reason why they're doing it.
No, it's true.
And we know that. And we know that because of your election.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you end up losing by...
So we're down by 1 vote. And so we went to court. We filed in Essex County Superior Court, ended up before Judge Dreschler. And... you know, just to give an indication of how so few people understand election laws. So we went in there with this complaint saying, hey, you got to look at these ballots. We think they ruled them inappropriately. And he scolded us. He says, you come in here with a complaint and you have no evidence. Where are these ballots? And we had to inform him that we're not allowed to have these ballots, that the law says only the clerk can handle the ballots. And he says, well, you could at least give me the copies of them or something. We just said, no, the law prohibits us from even making copies. We can't even take a picture with our phone. And the judge didn't even know that. So he got kind of angry. And he told the town clerks at this hearing, all right, get me those ballots tomorrow morning. I want them in my court tomorrow morning. And so they made a big fuss. Under police escort, they had to deliver these ballots to make sure no one would mess with them, right? They deliver them all the way to court. And once again, this attorney, Jerry McDonough, convinced that judge, hey, you can't open those ballots. This is not your jurisdiction. And so my lawyer said, no, wait a minute. We just talked to the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General said, it is your jurisdiction. And McDonough said, no, it's the House's jurisdiction. He said, only the House can rule on something like this. It's their jurisdiction. And the judge caved. And it went to SJC, Supreme Judicial Court. That judge said the same thing. No, it's in the House's jurisdiction. Only the House, because according to our Constitution, the House is the final arbiter of who gets seated.
And of course, because the House is run by Democrats, well, we can already see where this is going.
Yeah, so we said, all right, you know what, we don't like this, but we'll accept it because it's in the Constitution. And so Mariano, to his credit, you know, temporarily said, we're not going to swear anyone in for this race and the first Middlesex, with 2 races being contested. And he said, we're going to put together this special House committee like required under the Constitution, and these 3 people, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, will determine who the actual winners are. So they ruled in the first Middlesex within hours. He said, no, there's no case here. Andrew Shepard was a Republican there. He was saying that, once again, like I did, that the signatures on the applications didn't match the envelopes.
Right.
and they threw it out because they said, you know what, it's too late. You have to do that before they open them, blah, blah, blah. So they gave that race to Scarsdale, the Democrat. They waited 2.5 weeks for mine, and finally they come out with a report saying, no, we're not going to look at these contested ballots. And Brad Jones said, I'm not going to vote for this committee's ruling if you don't at least look at these contested ballots.
Right.
And they refused to do it. And once again, this guy, Jerry McDonough, convinced 2 judges and this committee, don't open those ballots. For the life of God, for the life of your children, do not open. They're scared to death of looking at these ballots. And so...
Oh, a monster going to come out of the envelope?
I don't know what they're afraid of. So
kill
Brad
everybody?
Jones submitted a bill yesterday, H53, that said, we need a committee to just look at these ballots. And, even if they did it after giving my opponent the race, I'd have been perfectly fine for the sake of fixing our election system so they could see the flaws in it. And so it went to a vote before the full House, and it went straight along party lines. Every Republican voted for H53 to look at these ballots. One Democrat, Russell Holmes from Boston, who deserves a profile in courage because he's one of the few Democrats that will actually stand up to leadership, voted with us. So, yeah, we should look at these ballots. Just look at them. And they refused to do it. They buried them. And so now under our law, those ballots and all those envelopes and signatures get sealed for 22 months, and then it's destroyed before the next election, which means the public will never see those ballots, those contested ballots.
It's outrageous. It's outrageous because of situational ethics. We know that politics is a team sport now.
Yeah.
And our guy can do no wrong, the other guy can do no right. And if you were a Democrat and this happened...
That's what we argued. We argued
they would have
exactly
done the
that.
exact opposite,
Yep.
and they would have argued the exact opposite because they have no soul, these people. They have no soul.
If my Democrat opponent was one down by a vote, you think this committee votes the same way?
No way.
Not
no
any
way.
chance
They
in
would have opened the envelope.
Yep.
They would have inspected it.
Oh, they would have opened everything.
Absolutely. They would have magnifying glasses.
Yep.
They
would
have
dig and dig and dig.
They would have publicly posted it online.
Absolutely.
But
and that's all I want at this point. Post them online. Let the public see these ballots. Like I said, I've already conceded because I don't want to be one of these stolen election people, although I'm probably the only person on earth that has a legitimate claim to it, right? I'm saying I've conceded. Let her have the seat. Mm-hmm. But for the sake of our elections and for the sake of the integrity of it, we should look at these ballots just to fix the flaws in our system so the public knows what happened.
But they don't want to fix the flaws in the system.
That's the problem.
Because it benefits them because we're a one-party state. I mean, and most people don't know, you are one of the most moderate Republicans in
I'm a rhino,
in the House.
Fully admit it.
And and proud of being a rhino, too. Like, most people use that as an invective.
I know.
But Lenny's not like a right wing. I'm a right winger. Okay, I'm further to the right than Pat Buchanan.
Yeah, you are.
But Lenny's not even close to me. He's not even close to my where I stand on things as far as conservative versus liberal, and yet they still screwed him because he didn't have a D next to his name.
No.
And what they really want is communism. They want one party rule. That's all they want.
They want ultimate one party rule. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what from here is there? If we introduce a bill to fix this, they're never going to vote for it because they benefit from it. If we turn to the courts, they're going to say it's not our jurisdiction, so there's nothing they can do about it.
Exactly.
So basically, in Massachusetts, we just put up with a fraudulent system.
As long as the voters put up with it, that's what's going to happen, Tom. What has to happen is the voters have to, at some point, say enough is enough.
Right.
Listen, every once in a while, they get fed up and they'll elect a Republican for governor, right? Because they realize one-party rule is not a good thing.
Right.
It never works out well. It never does. I mean, you look at California, New York, Illinois, people are leaving there by the millions. There's a reason why people are leaving there. And, the same thing's going to happen in Massachusetts.
Right.
It is.
What's happening now? And
you are seeing it happen now.
I'm actually, in the last couple of weeks, been looking at possibly moving my office to New Hampshire and incorporating in New Hampshire. We would save taxes, but I also I practically live in my office, right? I don't know that I want to live under this kind of rule anymore. I just don't. Whether it's stealing elections, whether it's trying to confiscate guns, whether it's turning us into California, I want no part of any of that. And as long as there's a chance we can push it back and we can fight back, but when they set up the system so that you can't, when they set up the system so that you can't stop fraud because they're the ones in charge and they're the ones committing the fraud, then you really kind of throw your hands up and say there's no way to win. Fighting isn't going to get you anywhere. You might as well just go somewhere else where maybe you could stop the bleeding.
No, it's true. That's why we have these laws. And the laws are put in place to make sure the different branches of government provide checks and balances. That's why it goes from the executive branch to the Secretary of State's office. He runs the election, right? But then if you have an issue, you're supposed to go to court and sue. That's the judicial branch, right? And then failing that, it's supposed to come back to the legislature where the House and Senate rule on seating their members, and it's just totally corrupt from top to bottom because it's once again it's all one party, and so this lawyer could he's a Democrat and he's arguing before Democrats, and how are they going to rule? Well, they're going to rule for Democrats,
right.
And it's unfortunate. And the people complain about Republicans in Congress and down in D.C. The ones that complain about Mitch McConnell, changing the rules on replacing a Supreme Court justice, right? And so when Obama was president, they said, he was wrong because he didn't allow Obama to nominate someone to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? And then Donald Trump becomes president, and then he did allow a new justice during an election year, right? And he's such a hypocrite, isn't he? Awful, and he is. I'm no fan of Mitch McConnell.
I agree,
but we do the same thing.
That's exactly right.
We do the same thing here.
That's exactly right. Had it been reversed, they would have taken the exact opposite position, and they would have argued the exact opposite.
I'll argue it's going to happen someday. There's going to be a Democrat that loses by 1 vote or less than 10 votes,
right?
And this is going to come up. And they will flip it on their head.
Well, it's like the Harry Reid thing, right? With filibustering Supreme Court nominations.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And he removed it, and the Republicans warned him, look, at some point we're going to be in the majority. We're going to do it to you. And then when the Republicans got in the majority and they did it to the Democrats, what did the Democrats do? They argued the opposite position.
Yeah. So we've done it here before. That came up yesterday, too. What's the procedure in Massachusetts if a U.S. senator leaves office? Who replaces him? Do you have an election or does the governor pick? Well, of course, it depends on the party affiliation of the governor.
Right.
So when Romney was the governor, I think Kerry left to become Secretary of State. Oh, no, we can't have the governor pick a replacement. We need an election. It's the will of the people.
Right.
And then a few years later, Deval Patrick is the governor, right? And we had to replace a senator. Oh, no, now we're going to have the governor pick a replacement.
Right.
It's just ridiculous. And, more than anything else, I blame the media more than anything else because the media is made up entirely of one party. Every newspaper has writers that are all Democrats. There's not a single Republican in any, other than maybe Howie Cott, the Herald. There's no Republican writers in the newspapers, not in the local papers, not in the state papers. Yours is the only one that has people of both parties, Tom. Right? The Valley Patriot has people on both sides.
Right.
But can you name another paper that does that?
I don't, and that's why
I can't name a one.
And that's why we do that. We started the paper because we were looking at all the other newspapers, going, well, where's the fairness? We just want to be. We just want to be fair. And so, we've got a radical lesbian, Danny Langevin, who writes for us every month about how Donald Trump is a Nazi.
She's interesting, though.
She is.
She writes a good article.
She is. She's a great writer because she's an educator. But I constantly get hate mail from people saying, I can't believe that you agree with this stuff. And I tell them, just because I publish it doesn't mean I agree with it.
Exactly.
I want both sides of every. I want not just both sides. Sometimes there's 3 sides to a story.
Yep.
I want to give the availability to everybody to give all of their sides. But the Globe and the Herald don't. The Eagle Tribune and the Lowell Sun don't. Bay State Banner doesn't. Mass Live doesn't. They all have a political bend, and it's almost all to the left.
Absolutely.
But even the ones that have been to the right, like Fox News, I get just as frustrated with them that Donald Trump took a dump yesterday. It was the greatest dump in the world. Come on, give me a break.
No, it's unwatchable. I can't watch Fox. I can't do it.
I can't either. I watch CNN for entertainment because they're so over the top stupid with the things that they supposedly report that I watch it like it's a movie. I watch it and I laugh like it's a comedy, like it's a Bill Murray movie.
Yeah.
And I just watch it and I laugh like, how do these people sleep at night? But at the national level, it's not so damaging as the local level, because at the local level is where people have the most control.
But you know what? The local papers, it's a tough industry right now, right? The market's not the same now. The business model doesn't work. So, when you and I were kids growing up 70s, 80s, every town, every city had its own local paper. Okay, I grew up in Woburn. The Woburn Times was big. But that model doesn't work anymore. No one has classified ads anymore, right? The advertising is gone as well. And so the local newspapers are just not there like they used to be. So no one's reporting on what Beacon Hill is doing. No one's really reporting on what the planning board in your town is doing, the Conservation Commission. It's gone. And we need something to fill that void. And it's serious because, like you said, the public is completely unaware about what is really happening.
Right.
And, before we run out of time, I just want to repeat that I don't think my election was, quote unquote, stolen. I don't think it was massive fraud. I don't want anyone to think that the machines were hacked or altered at all. In fact, the machines were spot on. They are deadly accurate. They really are. And they, according to the machines, I won. But it was the subsequent recount where human error comes into play, and that's where the election changed, and that's where the mistakes were made. And
so you're being kind by saying human error and mistake.
No,
I don't think there was human error, and I don't think it was mistakes.
No, I think it was.
I think it was done on purpose. I think these people purposely tried to steal this election away from you, and they succeeded.
The Board of Registrars are not trained election workers. It's not like they go to school for election laws. These are just usually senior citizens who just volunteer their time.
Right.
What the Board of Registrars usually does is they look at the signatures that you submit when you go to run for office. So to become a state rep, you have to get 150 signatures. The town clerk takes them, and just to get a second set of eyes, the Board of Registrars will stamp it. That's all they do.
Right.
They're not trained in anything, and for some reason, they're the ones who decide the will of the voter on those ballots that you described. Like if there's a scribble in the oval, should you count it? Well, yeah, you are supposed to count it.
Right.
Or if there's 2 ovals filled out, do you count it? You know, and
well, sometimes it's a stray mark on the ballot that the
Yes.
person just kind of like they drop their pen or
Exactly
whatever.
right. Exactly right.
And you're right. It's got to go by the intent of the voter. But I remember when Willie Lantigua turned in his nomination papers when he ran for mayor, and there were 2 sheets that were all signed by the same person, and it was obvious. It wasn't even like they staggered them. They had people sign in between. It was 2 full sheets with the same exact writing on it. And when we were there for the appeal or whatever they called it, I remember Bill Maloney at the time, who was a city clerk in Lawrence, saying, "Oh no, our only job is to make sure that it's the same name as what's on the voting list, not to see if it was forged or not." So this is another law that was pushed through quietly by the legislature to allow voter fraud on nomination signatures. Even on nomination signatures, they have it. Of course, unless you're a Republican, and then somehow they find a way. They find a way to make it work the other way. So when we got about 5 minutes left. How long were you in the legislature?
I got elected in 2012. I was there for 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
And in that 10 years, before you got elected, I think somebody sat down with you at lunch and told you how dirty this was, and you didn't believe it.
Who was that? Who would have been that person, Tom?
And you didn't believe that.
No, I knew it was, but you know what it is? You go in there thinking, you elect good people, you can make change. You know, you just talk to your colleagues and, work together, bipartisan fashion, and you can affect change. And a lot of us go in there thinking that. And, sometimes you can if you got a good situation, at least with a Republican governor or something. And you know what? All that's gone now. It really is. And it's like the extremists in the party are just taking over, and it's just unfortunate. But yeah, you're right. It's a filthy game. And, there's an old saying. I think someone said, if you want a friend in this business, get a dog.
Get a dog.
Right? And yeah, yesterday's vote just showed that. I mean, all I was asking for is some transparency. I mean, even if they do it now or a month later, I've conceded the election, so let my opponent have her seat, whatever. At least look at those ballots, open them up, do the right thing, and they won't do it. And they're going to bury that evidence and make sure no one ever sees it. And it is just absolutely disgraceful.
Is there any way to stop this? Is there any way for the future to stop another Lenny Mirra from having an election stolen, Democrat or Republican? Is there anything? Can we do something at the federal level? Is there, or are we just screwed and you might as well just move to New Hampshire? Because that's where I am.
Short of winning, what did Obama say? Elections have consequences, right? Yeah, you don't like it, go out and win an election. And it's true. We got to win an election. Maybe Attorney General, maybe Auditor, maybe Diane DeZogli will help out because she is like one of the few straight shooters down there now, isn't she? Who knows? But there's going to be another election. There'll be other elections for the legislature. There'll be another election for governor. You just need someone that's going to take this seriously. But between now and then, what I think needs to happen is our own party needs to right its ship. And, we've been on a bad path for a lot of years. I blame my party more than anything else. Our state party was dysfunctional to be kind. It was probably the worst run party in America, bar none. Think about it.
Yeah.
So 2 days ago, we elected a new chair, Amy Carnival. I don't know her that well, but it's a step, and like I said, we love Jim Lyons. But the direction we were going in just wasn't the right direction. It wasn't working, Tom. We were losing seats. We were losing credibility. And
they weren't building. I love Jim Lyons too. He's one of the most wonderful people I've ever met in my life.
He is.
And I'd be there for him for anything that he needed. But they weren't building a farm team. What the Democrats do is, if you show up at a Republican event and you're brand new and nobody knows you, they hand you their card and say, how can you donate to our campaigns, right? You show up at a Democrat event, they hand you their card and say, oh, what can we do for you? Want to be on the library board of trustees?
That's right.
Want to be on a zoning board?
Absolutely.
Want to be on a school committee?
Planning. Yeah.
Right. And they build a farm team so that when there's an opening for state rep, they've got 30 people they can tap into that owe them favors, right? The Republican Party, they say, can you give us a check? And then you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
There's no cultivating anybody. There's no trying to get people on school boards and library boards and zoning boards to build a farm team. It was always, let's just get the governor's office and everything else will be fine. How has that worked out? Romney, Weld, Salucci.
Yeah, we won governor's race. That's great, isn't it?
Right,
but what do we do for the legislature?
But where are we, though? Like, after all of those years of Republican governors,
Right.
have they built the Republican Party in Mass? No, it's in shambles. It's in a total shambles.
It's in worse than shame. Yeah,
Right.
it's completely dysfunctional. They spent the whole time suing each other, digging up dirt on each other, spending the party's money to hire investigators to dig up dirt on each other.
Right.
Okay? I mean, as if Democrats weren't doing that enough to us.
Right.
But,
It's a circular firing squad.
It absolutely is. We are our own worst enemy.
And it's one of the reasons I
Yes.
left the party. It's one of the reasons I left the Tea Party.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I was the keynote speaker on the Common for year after year after year at the
Yep.
Tax Day Tea Party. But I'd go to these meetings and I'd talk about things that were important, like putting photo ID on EBT cards, which was Katie Ives' proposal, a Democrat.
There you go.
And I said, let's get her here to talk about this. And they wouldn't let her because she was a Democrat.
Oh, God.
And then it was a circular firing squad because some Republican came in, but he was for abortion.
Oh,
so
geez.
all of a
Yeah,
sudden, he
there
was
you
a
go.
bad guy. We couldn't
Yeah.
have him. And there was all these purity tests, and all they did was kill each other. And so finally, I just walked away and said, "How are you ever going to win this way?"
Never
And I
gonna
don't want to
win
be.
that
I don't
way.
want to be part of this.
I don't blame you.
So, what's up for you now? And we don't have a lot left, but we can go like a minute, right? What's up for you next? Are you going to?
Honestly, I think we're severely lacking in media, and I'd like to do something there. I don't know what, but you know, I love what you do. I'd love to do something like that.
I've got a proposal for you.
Sure. What do you got?
We're incorporated.
Are
So
ya?
if you wanted to buy into the Valley Patriot and help us
right.
make it better, you know, at the end of the year, we're an S corp. So at the end of the year, if we make money, you get a percentage. Usually, we lose money because we spend down. Then you get a tax break at the end of the year. So either way, your investment, you get it back.
See, that's the step I think we really need to go with.
Yeah.
Honest to God, because we do a terrible job at it. And, you know, I'm one of those Republicans that complains about media bias, right? But instead of complaining about it, you know, what have we done about it?
Right.
Not a lot.
Right.
And Republicans just don't go into this field. You know, I went
And
to
when they do, they create a Republican conservative paper. Like, I don't want to, I love Lenny Brennan, but
Yeah.
they created Boston Broadside to
Yeah.
offset the Democrats in the regular media. But then they turned it into what the media does, only with a
Yes.
different view. And if they were, and I used to say this to Lonnie all the time, the pizza shop down the street doesn't want to advertise in a newspaper like that. So you're only going to be preaching to the converted and
Right.
selling ads to the converted, and you're not convincing anybody. Whereas what we try to do is the exact opposite. We represent all views. We try to be fair to everybody. But when something happens and somebody puts their finger on the scale, we call them out. We
Right.
always try.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So if that's something you're in, we'd love to have you on board because that whole area, Amesbury, Georgetown, Groveland, we do deliver there. We have
Yep.
like one or two. You know, we've got the post office, but we haven't saturated that area like when we first started. We could have you do that. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Love writing for it. And
love
you guys do a good job.
What are you most proud of as a state rep? You served for 10 years. What are you most proud of?
You know, we had a bill come out of committee last year, and this is the reason why I ran for reelection. Because, you know, when I first ran, I thought 10 years, do it and get out. But I have a bill, and you're going to think this is crazy. It's a quote-unquote socialist idea. It's a bill that would study a revenue-neutral guaranteed jobs proposal. Okay, sounds crazy. And believe it or not, I got the idea from, of all people, Bernie Sanders and Ayanna Pressley. They are pushing something similar in Congress. And it's to look at the way we spend money, look at all the welfare entitlement spending we spend, add it all up, and say, are we better off paying people to work instead of paying them to stay home? Because right now, welfare pays people to stay home and not work.
Right.
That's what we pay them to do. And that's a really bad thing. Just think the human nature part of it, because once people are out of the workforce for a lot of years, it's very hard to get some people
We
to
saw
go
that
back.
with COVID. We saw it with
Yes,
COVID,
we did.
right?
Some are never going back to
Right.
And that's tragic.
Right.
Okay, they'll be on, you know, assistance forever now. And it's a bad thing. And, you know, a lot of people, when they first get laid off or out of it, they want to work, you know, and you want people to be in that habit of getting up, you know, Monday through Friday, going to work, going to a place of business or whatever.
So in lieu of paying them welfare to stay home.
Exactly. Pay them to do something, because there's no end to the work that needs to be done around this state.
I mean, they could stuff envelopes at the treasurer's office. They
Absolutely.
could, you know, like there's a million things that we could put people to work doing. How about just like cleaning up your neighborhood? We'll give you welfare if you just clean your neighborhood up.
Think about that. You could hand them a broom and just say, pick up the trash in your
Right.
neighborhood, pick up along Route 95, whatever.
Right.
Or look what you do with the homeless, because I went with you once. It is a whole, like, tent city along the Merrimack River.
Right.
I mean, think about all the volunteer work that could help those people, right?
Right.
And instead of doing that, we're paying them to stay home
Right.
and not work. But anyways, that's just pie in the sky. Hopefully someone will pick it up and run with it.
Well, it's a Democrat state, so there's a really good chance of that.
Yeah, you never know.
So will you come back? We'd love to have you back
Yeah, I
at
love
some
doing it,
point.
Tom.
And maybe
Thank you for
we'll even
doing
make
this.
him like a temporary co-host or something if he wants to come in
All
once
right.
in a while.
Would love to do it.
I want to thank our sponsors. I know we're time up, and I thank Chrissy for letting me go a little bit over. What a great story and an exclusive on top of it. I want to thank McLennan Real Estate, Century 21, Matt McLennan. We love those guys over there. And by the way, catch out their videos. Go to their Facebook page. They do these funny little videos. and they're hilarious, and we love that. No, they're not advertising anymore. Marsan and Son Construction. Ronnie Marsan, we're going to give him a free table to the bash this year. He's going to sit up front because we screwed up last year. He bought a table, and then when he got to the room, there wasn't a table for him. And we appreciate that he was nice about it last year and didn't leave on us, so we're going to give him a free table. EIS, investigation, and gun training. Borelli's Deli, where I'm going to get my hot sausages if I can get there by 4 o'clock. Tomo and Shaken Seafood. You got to try the Emperor's Delight. Emperor's Deluxe, whatever it's called, and the Kamikaze Sushi Rolls, excellent there. A free shout out to Clear Path for Veterans New England. Brian DePina and they sat down yesterday. We had a little meeting about helping them get some transitional housing for homeless veterans in Lawrence. AFC Urgent Care, I got a great story about that next week. Pleasant Valley Landscaping, Dave Id Consoli's looking for workers. A free shout out to JG's Ice Cream. We love the Jafita brothers. And Christy, of course, for doing a fine job. Melvin Taylor says you got to go home, so go home already.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.